Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Project podcast. I'm your host, Tami Roos, and here at Momentum, we aim to challenge and champion committed men who are ready to take charge of their lives by mastering their mind, optimizing physical potential, and unlocking their power to find their mission. Whilst our work is predominantly with men, we hope that this podcast will provide value to all who choose to listen. So without further ado, let's jump in.
And a huge shout out to our first sponsor here, Be Spunky, the Australian men's health brand designed to support you to be the best you can be. Now, Blake Genoa and myself have been using this for quite some time now and absolutely love it. This product is something that we take every single day and drastically improves our training. But the one thing that I've noticed is my recovery time and the way that I feel the next day after training is so much better when I'm taking Be Spunky than when I'm not. And it is scientifically formulated to support optimum male hormone levels vital for strength, drive, and overall well-being. So big thanks to Be Spunky. You can find the link in the description below.
Tami Roos, mother, mum.
Son, Dylan, eldest son.
Thank you for joining us on the Momentum Lifestyle podcast. How are you?
No, I'm really well. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, it's great. We get to have many conversations off air in our day-to-day life. So I thought it would be good to bring some of those insightful conversations that we have to the podcast format.
Beautiful.
So let's get started. So meditation. You are a meditation teacher, a spiritual teacher, working in the space for close to 25 years now. How great has the change in the landscape, socially speaking, and the attitude towards meditation changed over the past 25 years from when you first started to what it's developed into now, where we've got Calm, we've got all these apps now, we've got athletes speaking out about how much they meditate, actors, celebrities, business people, business moguls. So how has it changed over the last 25 years?
Such a good question. And it's changed dramatically. The landscape's unbelievable. It's unrecognizable from 1999 when I learned to meditate. I mean, at that time, to be honest, no one was talking about meditation. It was kind of like a concept or an idea that was out there, but it wasn't something that was readily discussed or even accepted. And I remember initially some of the backlash was, wow, something must be wrong with you if you're going to go learn to meditate. And it was like, so wasn't so much a stigma, but a misunderstanding or something that, again, people equated to it being a religion, or they equated it to you're going to go off to, you're going to be a hippie and have dreadlocks and be in a cave. And so there was a lot of just misnomers, where now I think it's fantastic because people are starting to recognize, thankfully, that we all have mental health. Just like our physical health, every person on the planet has mental health. And it's so important now to have these discussions. And I think it's amazing seeing the number of people endorsing it, because to be honest, to be on top of your game, you do need to look after your inner world. So that's where it's so important. And yeah, so I'm really grateful again for all the different, I guess, podcasts or information, the science that's backing it up, and just the general discussion and people being open to saying, hey, you know what, let's try something that's going to help us.
What was driving that philosophy, 25 years ago? Because there's still remnants of it now, where there's still a massive misunderstanding of what meditation is. It's obviously gotten a lot better in terms of, I think the misunderstanding is still there, but there's now a new understanding of, well, it's good for me. I don't really know why or what it is, but I know that it's good for me. But there's still that misunderstanding, I think, underneath the surface. So what was driving that? Why has that been the perception of meditation?
Well, I think the number one thing is the missing piece was that we had mental health. It was such a negative stigma. Like if you said, people didn't talk about it, it was like that skeleton in the closet, which it should have never been. And that's an unfortunate aspect of it. It didn't matter that we had like the sages and the yogis and people talking about it for like close to 2,000 years and evidence of saying this works. But the westernized world, to be honest, it was like, and I think, and again, this is not about a judgment or projection, but truly people were like, well, I can't really see what it's doing. You know, like in terms of if I go to the gym, I'm going to see a physical change. So it was happening on the inside. So I just think there was this lack of, or like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you don't know what it is, and if you're not willing to really kind of go to that next layer, but hang on, is there something here I can explore or I could be curious about? I think then it got stuck in this kind of like this limbo place. So when I was growing up, as you know, for your listeners, I'm now 55 years old, and growing up in America, it was like everything about health had to do with physical fitness, eating the 4 food groups, drinking 7 glasses of water, and having enough sleep. Literally, that was end of story. So if you're not being educated, and if as a child you're going to school and no one's talking about it in the schools, you're not being taught it, that's why it was so hard to get it kind of like being more, and I would say, and completely agree with you, it's still not 100% accepted in the general public. Do you know what I mean? Like, because some people still think, oh, you know, I'm just too busy, or, you know, I don't know about that, or, you know, it doesn't work, or so there's still this thing about, but I think what comes, you know, if you want to go into a really, I guess, deep aspect or layer of that, it's about the value you place on your own, you know, your own personal worth and self-care and self-love. So if you don't value, and you're not putting this value piece on how you show up each day, or that you're worth the effort to look after yourself, that you could do something that's going to nurture this inner world, but that's going to have this impact on every other person that you come in contact with, all your relationships, on your health, your well-being, your immunity, you know, your mindset, your emotions. Like, it has this far-reaching grasp, which I'm sure, and I know with your background, because I love what you and the boys are doing at Momentum, you know, the more that we can discuss this and just make people understand, you don't have this, you know, like I kind of look at the human being, you know, as it's like the diamond. I don't know if that's coming up well, but the 4 sides is like mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. You've got this diamond here, right? And I think for so long, this mental aspect was just missing. So people didn't know it was actually that you had to actually look after your mental health to impact physically, emotionally, and spiritually as well. And if one aspect of that, you know, that diamond is out, then it collapses, doesn't it? You don't really, because, you know, it all impacts the whole. So we, again, it's just that lack of understanding, and just getting more people who were saying, and I think it has helped too, even with, you know, a benefit obviously of technology has been the access to information. So if anyone doubts what I'm saying here, and what some of you may not know, was the benefits I started experiencing from not having a meditation practice led me to, as you know, Dylan, getting my PhD. I went back to school, got my PhD, wrote my dissertation on the benefits of meditation. So from a scientific perspective, and the fact that I'm a long-term meditator, 23 years, it's a daily non-negotiable habit, I feel like you know, I kind of can stand on I got some solid foundations to discuss this. And it's so, so important for anyone listening. This is seriously, I think, like this missing ingredient, and it is something that can utterly transform your world. But if you don't know that you can actually feel different or behave different, or perhaps show up with more energy, or feel you've got more clarity, or that you feel calmer, whatever. I mean, again, this is why I say it impacts everything. You know, then you kind of like go, oh, it's just this pie in the sky idea. It's out there, but it's not really tangible until you practice.
Yeah, I think you make a great point too, with the rise of awareness around people's mental health. The rise of the greatest tool for your mental health is going to accompany that. And that is how I view meditation. Is it's the foundation that starts my day. It's the foundation that starts Blake's day, it starts Genoa's days. You know, Genoa's a meditation teacher too. You know, it is that starting block of, cool, let's start our day on the best way possible, or at least give ourselves the best the best chance possible to have a great day, you know, which is starting with looking after our mental health. And I know Genoa likes to talk a lot about the performance side, the de-stress side of meditation. You mentioned the science just before. So what is the science that you speak of? Why is meditation so important? What's going on when we sit in silence for 10 minutes, or we attach ourselves to a mantra? What's actually going on, scientifically speaking, when we're meditating?
Okay. Great question again. And the reason why I like answering this for so many people is because I think if you do have more of a grasp of why it's so important and what it's doing, then perhaps you'll commit more time to doing this when you have an understanding of what's actually transpiring within you. So the number one thing is most of us don't realize when we kick into fight or flight. So we know that it impacts our autonomic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system to sympathetic nervous system. So when we're in fight or flight, if you visualize yourself in a car and you're just going to hit the accelerator and your foot goes down, like you are going to go 100 miles an hour, right? Athletes have that awareness of when they're in a game and you're coming off of a game or something where you've done, a competition. You, in order to actually kick out of that, it's actually sometimes, you'll hear people say, oh, it took me 3 hours to unwind or 4 hours to unwind. And sometimes people will say, again, this isn't judgment, like I need to have a few beers or I need to have a few drinks or whatever it is to kind of like kick out of it. They're trying to like come down of this high. What meditation does is it literally takes you out of fight or flight into rest and digest. Okay, so literally fight or flight to rest and digest. So think about that, this concept of just rest and digest. So my definition of meditation is relaxing the body, quieting the mind. It's a form of relaxation. And all of us love the idea of relaxing. We know the benefits of relaxing. So we know the benefits of how we can actually start restoring our body's immune system and all levels. So when we meditate, the left and right hemisphere of our brain becomes coordinated. The left side being the analytical thinking, the right side being the creative, intuitive side of our brain. If we create a bridge between the two, which is what happens with a consistent meditation practice, then all areas of your life start to improve because you've got like this direct link. So there's not this missing gap. All of a sudden you've got a bridge there. You access more of your brain in a meditative state than at any other time in your life. So consider that for all of you.
Wow.
You access the most, you cannot access parts of your brain. Like, again, this is all, alpha, beta, delta, theta. It's about the different brainwave frequencies. The ideal state, when you go into that, that state of meditation, when you're really kind of like in that theta, that very much that intuitive, where those aha moments come, right? You are accessing more than at any other time. Because when we're in that alpha state, we're just like, go, go, go. So we don't have the ability to really hear the intuitive promptings, because the average human being has 70,000 thoughts a day. You take that 70,000 thoughts, if you're not learning to slow down, it's like mind muscles, yeah? Your brain's learning to do weight, so you don't slow that down, then how can you be aware of what you need to be aware of? Because you've got so much noise. So when you ask about the science, Dylan, it's like, okay, hang on a minute. So if I've got now this link between the left and right hemisphere of my brain, my focus increases, my clarity increases, my procrastination levels drop. Okay, you start showing, your brain displays orderly functioning when you create that bridge, which means you become much more effective and efficient with your time. So it's like your priorities. You then know how to prioritize too. Like, I'm going to do dot, 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 and dot. And I always talk to people about being in that state of flow. And I truly think that's what happens when I meditate and I get into that zone. It's like I'm in that meditative flow. So I'm able to actually function at a higher level. But what it also does is it allows me to use my time wisely. So studies have shown, and again, when I wrote my PhD, there was more than 800 research and review papers. Now that was in 2007. You fast forward, and I know in 2020, we had 3 research and review papers being printed every week last year in the United States. So you take that, we're in the thousands now. The research shows you it works. And I think what people have to understand is when you go out of fight or flight into rest or digest, all areas of well-being increase. So the immune system is enhanced. I think it was Harvard last year, or Rutgers released a paper that said after a 6-week consistent practice, your immune system is boosted by like a whopping 37%. So think about that just strictly with what's going on in the world right now. All of us have things that are pulling at us, right? We're busy. What do I do next? We have that to-do list. Oh, I got to do this. I got to go get the dry cleaning, or I'm taking the kids, or, I got to do this study, or I've got an exam, or I'm out with the boys tonight, whatever it might be. But that starts to weigh on the immune system when we're always on. So you get out of fight or flight, you go into
Mm.
rest and digest. Okay. We also know with a consistent meditation practice, melatonin levels increase. What's the huge link with melatonin? Sleep.
Sleep.
So your sleeping in patterns improve. So all of a sudden you get in these deep, restful states of sleep. So I just think the science is just so overwhelmingly positive, with the number one benefit being the reduction of stress and anxiety. I didn't even get to the number one, but all of us know if we are going to reduce stress and anxiety, that means the cortisol levels drop. We have more oxygen in our bloodstream. It's like everything starts operating much more efficiently and effectively.
Mm.
The other big benefit is, from a scientific perspective, is stress is the number one precursor to poor communication.
Mm.
Okay, so think about that. How many of you have ever started a conversation when you're already stressed and you think, why did I even start that? Because it's like a train wreck. You go, oh my God, back up, back up, back up, because it might be coming out wrong. You might say something that's, interpreted the wrong way. You're trying to get out of it because you're feeling stressed. So if you know that, I always say to people when I'm, kind of working with them, take a moment, come back to your center, do some deep breathing, do something to actually bring you back to that center so that you can actually come from a perspective of being a better communicator, which we know if we're not as stressed. So our personal relationships start improving the more we
Mm.
meditate. Okay. So this is where it's just like, and Dylan, you've heard it for however many years that, because Paul, my husband, Dylan's dad, we both learned to meditate at the same time. And to be honest, it was our non-negotiable. The boys grew up with it. So they do have a benefit because they've seen the impact on us, and they've seen that we actually, walk the walk and talk the talk, if that makes sense. Like, it is our
Mm.
daily, it's what we do. So I think just having that ability to understand how many different areas of our life it can impact is huge.
Mm. It's funny because I think what really cemented my practice was linked to the 30 days creates a habit thing, in terms of, but more so in, once I hit like around a month of meditating and then I stopped, I realized just how much I was off when I stopped meditating. So it took me a while to actually finally go, okay, I'm going to meditate every day for a month. When I hit that and then I fell off or I stopped, it was like, oh no, like that is like my practice now. Like that has to be there all the time, because I think the change is so small, it's so incremental over the time that you almost take it for granted until you stop. And then you're like, oh wow, the reason I've been able to have better conversations, be calmer under pressure, sleep better, feel better, is because of my meditation practice. Yeah.
And 100%. And I used to see the difference when you didn't. Absolutely. Yeah. And so it becomes something that people start picking up on as well, Dylan. Like you said, people will recognize and say to you as well, and I've heard them go, oh, wow, Dylan, you seem really calm now. But what's this big thing? And I used to say that I used to watch your daily habits were so effective when you had that consistent practice.
Yeah.
I'm not talking, again, my big thing too for anyone listening is meditation has to be what resonates with you. I don't believe there's a superior practice. I don't believe there's a right or wrong practice. So find what works for you and then just trust it. Trust that you're worth it, but trust the practice. And it's like anything. If I said to you, let's go, I'm going to train to run a marathon. Well, literally, you just don't go out and run a marathon. You have to, maybe get a, running coach, and you have to buy the proper shoes and get the right attire. And then you get a plan. And it's something that you build upon. And that's the same with meditation. It just doesn't happen. And Dylan's such a prime example. And I hope you don't mind me using you, but like you said, you would start, then you kind of stopped, then you'd start, then you stopped. And then all of a sudden the penny dropped and you went, wow, this is amazing. Look at what I'm getting done and how I'm feeling. And I think all of us, life's hard. Yeah, there's challenges. We all have ups and downs. Life is not this, never been guaranteed to be roses all the time. And it's through some of these challenging parts, obviously, that we learn the most about ourselves. We have many lessons, and I think life would be boring if we're all kind of like robotic. But the point being, I don't think there's one of us that steps out our front door saying, oh God, I hope today is full of chaos and stress.
Mm.
We walk out our door going, oh my God, like I hope everything goes really well today, and I hope I get these things done. Or it might even be something as silly as, okay, I'm going to this cafe, I hope I can get a park out front or close to it, like little things. But we're always thinking about how we're envisioning or how we, so-called desire our day to do.
Mm.
And I guess what I really learned early in the piece was, life, Buddha says life is a creation of your mind, because it's how we're thinking. So if I actually really, which I started, went, wow, this is so powerful. So if I want to give my best, my best shot at having a good day, then I set my day up with meditation. Like I'm not leaving it to chance. So I know that my thinking is real and has an impact on my day. My mindset, how I'm feeling, impacts all of it, all my relationships. So the best thing I can do, and the best thing that any of us can do, is go, okay, well, I'm going to actually set myself up. I'll meditate so I can have this day.
Mm.
Yeah. With less
Yeah.
stress.
I think too, the more I think about it, from a resilience point of view and human nature point of view, is human beings are so resilient, but we're wasting a lot of our resilience on things that we don't need to waste our resilience on. And what I mean by that is, when you can bring in practices that make you feel better, you realize only after doing it, oh, wow, that's how bad I was actually feeling. That's how stressed I actually was. And because we're resilient, we get used to that level of stress, and we're still able to function reasonably well. We're still able to sleep reasonably well. We're still able to go to work and function reasonably well there. But once you realize that you're wasting, or I was wasting my resilience on my day-to-day life, it was it was exhausting me. But because of the resilience piece, it's like, well, I can just keep going. I've got this. I can keep going. But then when the meditation practice really landed for me, I was like, oh, wow, I feel really good. And I've got so much energy to do other things. And I'm not as tired. I'm not as stressed. I'm not as snappy. Your life just, I think you used to say this all the time. Your life can only improve through a meditation practice. It can only get better. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be scared of. You might start to drop into like, oh, wow, I'm actually really stressed, but the meditation practice makes your life better. And
it's
there's no
gift that
downside.
keeps on giving.
Yeah, there's no downside to integrating that practice. And I love that it's called a practice too. You're constantly practicing it.
Yeah. But this is where I think people get lost, Dylan, because they're quite accepting and willing to go for a run or to the gym or do Pilates or yoga or whatever to stay physically fit, because it's like, we know how we feel when we're releasing endorphins, and we know how it feels to be fit or feeling good, right? So it's just like something that we just do. And like what you just said is so perfect, because this idea is a practice. Like everything we do in life is about, there's no get out of jail cards. There's no free passes, right? So everything we do in life is about, well, what effort are we willing to put forward into having this best life we're going to live? What effort are we willing, to put forward into our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being? And it's just so, important. And I love what you said about resilience, because it is true. If we don't know what we don't know, then like you gave good examples. You're going along and you're like, and you kind of go, oh, okay, God, like, oh, at the end of the day, God, I got through that day. But if you're just falling into bed exhausted and thinking, here I go again when I wake up, that's what we're trying to say. Okay, hang on. We can navigate that, because I do truly believe it doesn't have to be with that mindset or that attitude that life is meant to be that tough. Life is meant to be enjoyed. And there is so many miracles around all of us. And that's why gratitude is such an amazing practice too. But there's things that we can do to cultivate that. And I think that's one thing that I haven't mentioned yet. And that's, the longer you meditate, emotionally, you become less reactive. So just consider that for a minute. So what that means is, and that's this whole dialogue between mindfulness and meditation, the difference between the two. So if we are less emotionally reactive, then we become, it's about being responsive. So, you respond, which is really being mindful, like you're aware of what you need to be aware of in order to respond the right way rather than react. Because reacting is usually always an emotional trigger.
Yeah.
You might yell, or frustration comes across, or stress, or you might cry, whatever it might be. But that's almost, which is fine. Everyone, human beings, we have emotions. That's, I'm not negating that and saying they don't, they matter and they count. But you can build a resiliency, which is about, oh, wow. And I remember this one time I came home, I think you were probably 7th or 8th grade, Dylan. I remember saying to Dad, like, something had happened. I go, wow, if that person had said that to me 2 years ago, I had this aha moment. I go, I would have been irate. And I realized it didn't touch me at all. It didn't affect me. It was like water off a duck's back. And I went, God, how did that happen? It was so subtle. But I just was able to sit there really calmly and realize that's kind of like your stuff, not mine. Yeah. It was like, wow, this is a really powerful place to sit in right now. So it was really good.
I think becoming the observer of your thoughts is such an important practice to cultivate, because you're able to create that space again through meditation, and another practice that I really love is journaling as well, to really refine what I've learned in my meditation or what's come up in my meditation. But is allowing yourself to step back and realize that you're not your thoughts, you are the observer of your thoughts, and trying to understand, well, why has that person said one thing to me and it spiraled me for the rest of the day?
Yeah.
And Blake talks about it a lot, where I think it's a Peter Crone quote, but the world will continue to show you people and experiences of where you're not free. And you can choose to kind of run for that, or choose to kind of dive into the work and choose to like really explore that space of, why is it when such and such comments on my hair, I freak out and for the rest of the day, or whatever it is, and that's always where the learnings are. And you mentioned at the start, around our lives being so busy that we were unable to actually really come up for air. And I've always known in my journey with depression and anxiety, what I found was when I was 21, that was playing so much on what was going on in my life, that when people were asking me how I was doing, how you going, Dill, it was like, yeah, good. And it wasn't that I was lying. It was, I had no idea how I was going, because life is so hectic. And I think so many people are running on autopilot, where they, yeah, good, I'm good. How are you? Yeah, good. And they genuinely think they're good. And then they get a second alone time, all this stuff pops to the surface, and like, oh, no, I need to go have a drink. I need to go out for dinner. I need to go play PlayStation. I need to go watch a movie, watch Netflix, whatever, but anything but staying in this alone space with my thoughts. And I feel like a lot of society is really challenged with that. And that's where, the juice lies, as you were talking about. That's where the insights drop into. That's where you're able to find the response mechanism versus the reactive mechanism.
Yeah. And I think being the observer, one thing that I really started to note was when I started really, working with a lot of different clients was, it's like what it teaches you and shows you is having a relationship with yourself. And that, what's so funny about that is I can say I have a relationship with Dylan or Tyler or Paul or whoever it might be in my life. But what about the relationship you have with yourself? And it wasn't until I was meditating a lot that I realized I'm doing things I don't even like, but I didn't realize I was doing things I didn't like. So it's all of a sudden you go, God, who am I? Like, what do I like? What do I dislike? What brings me joy, or what ignites passion within me? Like, God, I want to get out, you jump out of bed, like, woo, like, let's go. And so it starts refining it. And as you said, when you can sit with a trigger and just breathe into it, it's amazing what happens, because you can actually feel, or I'll speak from the first person here, I can feel like a tightness in an area in my body, or it might be a feeling, and I can identify that feeling now. I go, wow, that's anger, or that's sadness, or I could feel it and go, well, what's below that? And as soon as I identify that, it just like, it dissolves and just kind of goes shoo, and you feel the energy move through you, right? And the beauty of doing that is then you're not kind of held prisoner by that thought or that emotion. It's not impacting the immune system. So understanding, again, for everyone listening, worry is the number one emotion that depletes our immune system. So the energy of worrying depletes your emotion more than, your immune system more than any other emotion.
Exhausting.
It's exhausting, right? If you're in that and you get caught up, it's almost like being on that hamster. Is that what in Australia, hamster?
Hamster wheel.
Hamster wheel. You get on the hamster. So you're just going round and round. And if you can't somehow get out of that, you can see how that just becomes, after a while, just exhausting. And you're like, far out, just get me. I want out of this space. So when you just said, Dylan, about people looking for ways, PlayStation or have a drink, or I'm just going to go do this, it feels initially like the best thing that you could do is just go do dot, dot, dot. And sometimes maybe that is exactly, but I can tell you the power lies when you can just sit with yourself for even as little as 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes. And guys, when you think about, we have, 24-hour clock, 60 minutes in an hour, we have 1,440 minutes in a day. And if you really are struggling to find 5 minutes, that's something to consider, because then where is this idea of self-worth really weighing, right? The Dalai Lama, who I'm sure most of you have heard of, he said, if you can't find 10 minutes a day to meditate, then you need to find 20. So consider that. Yeah. So consider that. Like, you've got to just really understand that is the power of what this allows you to do. But when I learned to meditate, I remember saying to Paul at one point, I go, girl, I think I lost who I was. I'd grown up in California, I'd gone to college, got my MBA, and then I meet this Aussie guy, get married, move to Australia, start all over. I had no foundations, no family. All my friends were in a different country, and I literally was starting from scratch. And I didn't realize the impact that had on me until I learned to meditate, because then I realized I kind of lost myself in the entire process of like my foundations were gone. So I always look back and think that meditation was the greatest gift I've ever given myself. And I would never change anything that's happened, because it's shown me so many things in my life that I was actually, and we all are, I'm not just talking about myself, but you know what? We all have so many gifts within, but you have to unearth them. Like, we've got these hidden gems, and we have to actually sit and unearth these gems to see the brilliance within. And I talk about in my book, The Diamond Within. And it's like every single person on the planet has this diamond within. But with time and with life and with experience, kind of like the diamond, it dims, right? It might get a bit of dirt and gets a bit dirty and cloudy, whatever. But the reality is the essence of the diamond, the structure of the diamond's never, ever changed. So the more you meditate, though, what you're doing, just like peeling the layers of an onion, you're just shining and bringing that brilliance. The brilliance has always, always been there. And that's for every one of you listening. Your brilliance is there. But meditation allows you to truly shine that diamond and come home to yourself. So you remember who you are, link into your heart, which right now, I think the number one call for us leading forward, 2021, it's been coming in for a number of years now, but really, I would say the number one tip I have for all of you is think with your heart first. How does this make me feel? What's going on? Lead from your heart. So it's like this heart mind processor. Heart first, heart mind. You link the two because we need our mind. It's amazing, but lead from your heart. And it is amazing what will transpire, because that is going to show you truly what is your path, your desires. Yeah. So that's where it's so powerful to sit with yourself in silence.
So much of the work is actually about unlearning who we are not, rather than like, oh, who am I? It's like, no, you know who you are. You just need to peel back all the layers of who you are not to come back to use your analogy, to come back to that diamond of who you actually are. And one of my favorite sayings is sitting in the fire. Like, when you're sitting in the fire, you're burning away all that doesn't serve you, and it's fucking uncomfortable to sit in the fire. You're literally on fire, burning away stuff, but it's for a purpose. You're growing, you're relearning who you are, you're stripping away those parts that no longer serve you. And it's interesting to your point around, you mentioned coming back to like empathy and compassion and love, and how does this make you feel? I made a post the other day about something similar about that, about how can we show up in a world that's so divided right now? How can we return back to like kindness, love, and empathy? And in my caption, I started it off by saying, this isn't some woo-woo like post, some woo-woo shit. Like this is just like practical and blah, 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 blah. And someone commented on it. It was so funny. It was like, how far have we drifted where love, kindness, and empathy is classified as woo-woo? And I was like, wow, that's such an interesting point around like where we're currently at, that I needed to put like a disclaimer of like, oh, this isn't some like out there esoteric concept. Like this is actually something practical that will improve your life if you can return back to love and kindness and empathy. And I think what's been happening over the last 18 months is bringing to light a lot of dark things, but I think ultimately it is like the world right now is sitting in the fire. It's burning away everything that's no longer serving us. And when we can return back to kindness, love, and empathy, it's actually such a beautiful place to be sitting in and to work from and lead from and cultivate relationships from and community and just overall show up from. And do you have something to say on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of my favorite parables is about we are the Hopi Prophecy. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And we are like in this reset, this global reset that we're in, that never before is the planet experienced something like this. But as you said, it's highlighting a lot of things that are no longer sustainable. They're not working. There's aspects of life that are simply broken. The systems themselves are broken. So be it political or big pharma, whatever you want to mention, there's some systems that are really fundamentally not working so well. And so, we've got to look, and like right now, currently like today, Glasgow, we've got the UN is meeting, like this is about, climate change. We've got to address what's going on. And I would hope that most people have taken the last, March 20th, I think was when Australia shut its borders, March 20th. So what are 18, 19 months to really grasp, like, there is some silver linings as well. Hopefully you had an opportunity to say what matters to me, like, or what is, kind of like, what's the legacy I want to leave? Like, well, how do I want to live my life? How do I want to show up? And like you said, from care, compassion, love. I really truly don't believe anyone wants to see a world that becomes more divided. It causes too much suffering, and there's too much pain, and there's too many people right now being forced on one side or another. And one of the things that I noticed I started doing in the last few months was because there was so much angst that was rising to the surface, I just kept reminding myself to stay in my own lane. Stay in my own lane. And I used to say to Paul, stay in our lane, stay in my lane, because it's like, because if I engage on one side or the other, right, it's like, what part of my power am I leaking away? So it has to be about what resonates within my heart. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, etc. But when it's actually hurting or causing more pain and suffering and dividing, then that's not where it's actually, you have to say it, but it has to be like this, in a way, it's a bit like, just saying, I honor and respect where you're coming from. I'd love to hear your conversation on this, but without having to have the fire, the angst, because I think right now people's belief systems are being threatened. And when your belief systems are threatened, you clutch at straws. It's like that, it's like you're just grasping at anything because you're trying to back up the belief system that you had. And to be honest, whether it's erroneous or, like Dylan, you use the best thing, it's no longer serves your highest good, it's still going to be a lesson there that you've got to look at some point. And I think that's, for all of us, part of our journey in our lifetime is remembering who we are. This is the spiritual journey. We're going up that spiritual ladder, but it's very hard to know who you are if you never pause and you never take time to look about what's going on the inside. So if I hadn't learned this tool in 1999, I know 1000% I would not be the person I am today, because I would not have had the awareness or the ability to cultivate these emotions. And what they find as well, which I think is really fascinating, I want you to consider this too. And again, this is scientific data. The more you meditate, the left prefrontal cortex of your brain actually changes shape. It becomes a bit more elongated. And that is the place, they dubbed it the place of acceptance and peace. So the more that you meditate, you are cultivating the emotions, Dylan, that you're talking about. The empathy, the peace, but the compassion, the kindness. You actually cultivate those emotions the more you meditate. And the other really interesting, I think, fact about long-term meditators, those who've been meditating for 5 years or longer with consistent practice, is that you can go off and you can get tested. And what you get the blood work done, you get all the tests done. And what they have found is that you physiologically will test 12 years younger than your biological age. So
is that from a brain health marker or
your DHEA levels? So those
Right.
are those are the scientists and doctors around the world. That level is the most accurate and conclusive. That's what they gauge your age on. So I don't know if any of you, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. If you remember Biggest Loser that came out a number of years ago in Australia, and I remember they went and they did the blood work on some of these people, and their biological age came back much older than the age they were in life due to the state of their health, right? So
Right.
if I'm saying to you that you are impacting yourself emotionally, physically, and physically, all four, and then they do the testing. So I actually got tested. It was roughly, I think I've been meditating, it was around 2007 or 8. So I've been meditating since 1999. And I would, if you're long-term meditators, go do it, get tested. I implore you to do it, because don't take my word for it. I always encourage people, do your own, bit of self-discovery or research. And what was so cool was the nutritionist that did this naturopath, she said, "Oh, I'd love to, can I test you? Because I've heard about this." I said, "Yeah, I'd love to have this done." So she did it, sent it away. And my markers came back at 10 years younger than my biological age. And that was I'd been meditating then about 7 years, I guess. So again, like I'm at 23 years meditation now, and I should really go get retested to see what it says. But I know for a fact. So and I say this as well, but once you understand what your why is, and like Dylan, you mentioned, or we both said early in the call, we all want to show up to have our best day possible. We don't want to walk out that door feeling less than. But if I know I'm physically feeling in good health, I'm less stressed, I feel calm, that I can have a smile on my face, which has, again, that's another conversation about the impact of just even smiling, what it does to us, and that I can offer this to others or conversation and be present, be a better listener and better communicator because I'm building the empathy. Then, to be honest, my life is I already feel like I'm kicking some positive goals before my day started, because I'm in a state of flow. And I don't feel less than. So if you think about, and we've got our mobile phones, right? Yeah, we're all connected to these devices. But how many of you would panic if you walk out your door going, "Oh my God, it's 15%. How am I going to recharge? Where's the next station? Do I have one in the car? Am I going to get to the cafe or the meeting? What if it runs out? What am I going to do?" So the reason for this illustration is we have emphasized and put so much of our priority or even our value into the device over our own mental health. So when have you considered plugging yourself in? So you look at your phone, you look at the little battery in the top right screen, you can see where it's at, and you can see when it goes into red. Well, how many of us have started a day feeling in the red zone? We're tired, we wish we could go back to bed, or we're feeling amazingly stressed. When you meditate, you are literally plugging into the brain. Remember, you are recharging, resetting. It's the pause. And that's why it's this gift that just keeps giving.
Yeah, it's never seen someone meditate and create a meditation practice and become a worse person as a result. There is always improvements, and there's always, I think you made a good point about, like, if you're able to communicate better, you're able to see more compassion, you're able to see yourself in them. Like, it's just such a great practice for cultivating that as well. So what are the biggest myths around meditation? What you mentioned earlier already, one, which is it's a religious practice, which it's not. What other great myths of meditation are there out there that you would like to debunk?
There's some good ones. Some, and I still hear this, and this tends to, be with some of the older generation, but this concept of having to sit in a contortionist pose, because they think of yoga and they think they've got to be like in cross-legged and do all this stuff that their body physically can't. That is a huge one, because people think I can't get in that position. So that's another myth. It's so easy to meditate in a chair. Obviously, sit in your car if you're not driving. You can sit in your bed. Sit with your back against the wall. I mean, there's numerous possibilities for meditation. I truly, though, do come from, I will say a little proviso here. If you lie down and meditate, especially when you are learning, you're just going to fall asleep. So that's not ideal, because it's a different state when you're meditating, sitting up, having a straight spine for that meditative flow, and what happens with the corresponding with the energy systems, the chakras, which I won't go into. Yeah. Another myth, though, is that you're going to have to chant. You don't. There's so many types of meditation out there. You don't have to, say the alms. You can visualize. You can use your breath. There's so many different ways that you can, there's not one superior practice, one over another. You don't. Okay. I guess one of the most profound is that you're supposed to be with no thoughts. That is probably the worst myth about meditation, and has caused so many people to give up because they believe they've failed, or that they've not reached their own expectation for themselves. The reality is, and I still will have thoughts, and I've been meditating, like I said, 23 years. It's just about being that observer. Let the thoughts go in one ear and go out the other. The only time you stop meditating is if you focus solely on that thought. So if I'm meditating saying, I got to go to the dry cleaner, I got to go to the dry cleaner, can't forget that, I got to go to the dry cleaner, I'm not meditating. But if I just observe, okay, there it is, I know it's going to come back to me. It will come back to me. Your thoughts don't disappear. So remember, again, it's taking those 70,000 thoughts, and it's just about focusing on the breath. Let everything slow down naturally. So you will have thoughts. Let them go, and you are still going to be getting benefits. The only time you don't reap the benefits of meditation is if you don't sit and you don't practice.
I think people too focus on like having a good meditation or a bad meditation.
And so again, that can be a myth too, because I think but again, I always go to that one step deeper, which is, well, how are you defining a good meditation versus a bad meditation? Some again think it's because they didn't go into a state of bliss, and some think, well, because I had thoughts. Some think, well, because I got really irritated sitting there. And remember, emotions are meant to rise. Okay. So sometimes it allows, so that uncomfortable feeling, then they think it's a bad meditation. Actually, I would say that's a good meditation, because you're letting things move out of you, right? So it's not like we're not sitting there trying to be this volcano and cramp, like keep the lid on the volcano. It's like, let everything just move out naturally, so it doesn't build up, so it explodes, right? One of my favorite quotes is by a gentleman named Panache Desai, and I loved it. He said, the single greatest cause of human suffering is the denial of our emotions. So every single one of us on this planet has emotions. We are all emotional beings, and we will have emotions. So you just let those pass. So that's a really good one. Any man, woman, and child could learn to meditate. I've actually had people say to me, no, I can't meditate. My mind is too busy. I literally am one of those people that I just can't. And a lot of people don't like what I have to say, but I go, no, that's ego telling you, or kind of driving the scenario there, because everyone can learn, but it's a practice. You have to teach yourself, like learning a musical instrument, playing a sport, whatever it is, you have to practice. So there's not a man, woman, and child that cannot learn to meditate. And I think those are the main ones, Dylan, but that's really good to point those out, because I think they become hindrances for people if they have this idea of this expectation. And, again, the benefits are there. Just give yourself that time.
So I guess what nuggets of gold or pieces of advice can you give to someone that's starting out, or maybe they started out, didn't like it, didn't think they were getting anything out of it, didn't think that they were good at it, like thought that they were meditating wrong, all those things that you just mentioned? What is your advice for those people that have, just starting out, or have started and stopped?
Yep. Okay. So number one, I guess, would be to just ask yourself, do I want to honor myself enough to give myself the best opportunity to feel better? because it's about a feeling sense. It's a feeling better on the inside. And if the answer is yes, then I'd love for you to revisit your meditation practice, but there's going to be a few things you're going to have to do. One, perhaps book time with yourself in your own diary. Okay. So you just block out 10 minutes, like you had I've got a Zoom call or I've got to catch up. Book time with yourself. Can you not in 1,440 minutes in a day, give yourself 15 minutes? So just get it in a diary. And I'd like you to set it up for a minimum of 21 days. 30 days would be ideal, but a minimum of 21 days, and commit to it. Commit to actually looking after yourself and doing this. If you can sit and just focus on the sound of the inhalation and the exhalation. So I'm giving you a very big cheat sheet tip here. If you listen with your physical ears, and I'm going to exaggerate this now, so Dylan, so it's exaggerated, and I just go, and I listen with my physical ears, science has shown us we cannot have a thought. So any of you who say, I can't do this because my mind is too busy, then I'm asking you to focus on the inhalation with your ears and the exhalation. You won't have a thought. And if thoughts start to enter, you draw your awareness back to, oh, I stopped listening. Go back to listening. So it is scheduling time, setting a period of time that you're going to do it. Know that you can control the amount of thoughts just by listening to the sound of your breath. And the last thing that I would say, though, is, and I'm happy to share it with Dylan to put on to at the end of this. I do have a helpful hint list, because there's different things to consider too. Your core body temperature drops when you meditate, so make sure you're warm enough, right? If you're trying to physically stay warm, it's going to be very hard to drop into a meditative zone because your body's working so hard. It's the same thing as if you've had a big meal before you meditate, or caffeine and sugar. Obviously, caffeine and sugar are pretty self-explanatory, but those are stimulants. You don't want those before you meditate. But there's no difference to having a heavy meal, because your body is working the enzymes on digestion. That does not allow you to have a really good meditation, right? Your posture is key. And obviously you want to, you don't want to meditate in the bright sunlight. You don't want to meditate with a light bulb in front of you or right in front of your eyes, because even with your eyelids shut, the light is refracted through the eyelids and impacts on the brain. So you want a dim room, right? Again, remember, warm, be comfortable. And then can you just give yourself permission? Just give yourself permission to enjoy the next 10 minutes. And it's funny how many times I've had to say this to people over the years. Can you give yourself permission to value yourself, look after yourself, enjoy yourself, not have to think? Like, what a gift is that to say, I'm going to give you, I crave it. It's like, oh God, I don't have to think. I get to just sit here and be and nurture myself and recharge. Remember, plugging that battery. I'm plugging in. I'm taking my battery from low to high. And I start my day at the full battery, right? Yeah.
And I would add to that too, you only really have control over the first hour and the last hour of your day. So for me, Janelle and Blake, it's the first thing we do when we wake up, because if I miss it and I sleep in or whatever, which happens, it's very unlikely that I get my meditation in, because life happens. People message me, let's catch up, let's do this, clients book in, work happens, I go to the gym, all these other things happen. So for me, I know it's the very first thing that cements me in my day, because otherwise we start to make excuses. We're great at making excuses. I don't have time. That's where the I don't have time pump comes in. You set your alarm 10 minutes earlier, you've got the time. There's the 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It comes down to priorities, doesn't it? You have to prioritize yourself. Every single day, though. And I've said for years, choose to be. It's my favorite mantra, choose to be, because life is one decision after another. So I agree with what you're saying, but if you get into the habit of saying, you know what, it's still my choice. Can I find 10 minutes at 10 o'clock? Can it be a 1 o'clock reset? Every single day, though, I choose. Am I going to meditate? Am I going to exercise? Am I going to drink water? Am I going to have a coffee? Am I going to have 2 coffees? What am I going to wear today? Where am I going? Do not, and I think this is something that most people like to think, is that they have no control. You have all the control in the world. It's your life. So choose to be, choose to empower yourself.
Choose to be. What a great way to finish up this podcast, Mother.
Lovely, Dylan.
Choose to
Thank
be.
you. I hope that there was some information to help everyone.
Lots of nuggets in there. I'm sure we'll get plenty of positive feedback. Tami Roos, thank you very much.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you later. Bye.
Yeah.